Today we are doing a training over sexual harassment. Some background and training objectives for today. Background, the reason for this training today is due to sexual harassment issues that were raised with complaints to the Minnesota Department of Human Rights on October 5th of 1984. Lawsuit was filed against the company on August 15th, 1988. The main reason for the lawsuit is because of harassment that was shown to female workers and what they experienced within the company. During the trial, which began on December 17th, 1992, the company was found at fault for not dealing with the sexual harassment complaints, which they could have prevented. This led to a settlement compensation and also to the company now having to create a sexual harassment policy and regular training yearly. The complaints were brought to management, but they were dismissed, which led to the increased harassment and emotional injury to the women. Examples of the sexual harassment that women in the company experienced were foul words written on walls in the women's locker room using feces, sexual requests from male employees to female employees, which led to a hostile work environment, sexual aids put into the women's lunch boxes by male colleagues. There was also an incident where a female was in the porta potty where she was trapped by male employees and then knocked over, which caused not only a distress to her, but also an emotional risk situation. The objectives for this training, which both employees and management should know by the end of the training, is to be able to define what sexual harassment is, identify the different types of sexual harassment, abiding by the sexual harassment policies, and understanding the disciplinary action upon violating this policy. Also, how to report to management and what management's role is in regards to the policy and how to regulate it.
First off is we're going to explain sexual harassment. So what is sexual harassment? The United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the EEOC, defines sexual harassment as any unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature when this conduct explicitly or implicitly affects an individual's employment, unreasonably interferes with an individual's work performance, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. There are two types of sexual harassment: hostile work environment and quid pro quo. Hostile work environment occurs when there is frequent or pervasive unwanted sexual comments, advances, requests, or other similar conduct. Quid pro quo occurs when some type of employment benefit is made contingent on sexual favors in some capacity. Some examples may be offering a raise in exchange for a sexual favor or asking for a sexual favor in order to not be fired. Hostile work environment includes, but is not limited to, the following: verbal harassment, this is making or using derogatory comments, slurs, and jokes; verbal sexual advances and propositions; verbal abuse of a sexual nature, graphic verbal commentaries about an individual's body, sexual degrading words used to describe an individual, suggestive or obscene letters, notes, or invitations; demeaning comments about coworkers of a sexual nature, sexually explicit language and or jokes, leering, making sexual gestures, displaying of suggestive objects or pictures, cartoons, or posters; touching, assault, or impeding or blocking movements. Here are just a few examples of sexual harassment in regards to a hostile work environment. All of these images depict unacceptable behavior that will not be tolerated within the company. The first image at the top left is showing examples of unwanted touching, whether it be from male or female. The image on the top right shows unwanted touching as well as blocking movements. The image on the bottom left also shows blocking and impeding movements. The image on the bottom right is an example of verbal commentaries about an individual's body. And finally, the middle image depicts many examples of hostile work environment. Unwanted jokes, gestures, and comments, physical bodily contact such as patting, grabbing, or interfering with an employee's ability to move, constant and repeated requests for a date or unwanted flirting, spreading or posting sexual or degrading emails or pictures around the workplace, including your own workspace, displaying sexually suggestive objects, pictures, or posters in the workplace, and playing sexually suggestive movies, music, games, or video clips in the workplace. Now I'm going to show you a quick video of some examples of the sexual harassment that we just went over.
So Ashley, you're looking kind of tense today.
Please don't touch me.
Do you need help with anything?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Whoa, Ashley! Why don't you come back inside if you really want that promotion?
No, stop this! I'm gonna report you for sexual harassment.
Log on to rain.org for more information.
Quid pro quo is when a manager or some form of authority figure offers or hints that he or she will give the employee something like a raise or promotion in exchange for a sexual demand. Quid pro quo also occurs if an employee responds negatively to the suggestion from the manager or authority figure and the manager decides to threaten the employee with a demotion or termination. Quid pro quo includes offering employment benefits in exchange for sexual favors, making or threatening reprisals after a negative response to sexual advances, any type of sexual conduct in order to remain employed. This is a video of an example of the quid pro quo sexual harassment.
How many times am I supposed to tell you, Tulsi? Didn't I tell you to file these papers 3 days ago? I sent you an email reminding you of it also. That delay has cost us a huge penalty and we have lost our major client. How are we supposed to compensate for that now, huh?
I'm sorry, sir. I told Rohan. He said he would email it, but...
No, Tulsi, it was your responsibility, not Rohan's.
Sir, but I told him to, and he said...
I don't care what you told him. What did I tell you? I'm sorry, but we have to let you go.
Sir, I'm sorry, sir. I'm really sorry. It won't happen again.
Okay. Stop crying. Listen. Maybe we can work something out. Why don't you stay back after work and you can go back to my place?
Sir, what do you mean?
Come on, Tulsi. You know what I mean. You're a smart girl.
Now that you have a better understanding of what sexual harassment is and the different types of sexual harassment, I'm going to test your understanding. Please grab your pen or pencil and your paper and answer whether each statement is true or false. Question 1. Harassment means demanding sexual favors from a woman. Number 2. Only physical acts by one employee against another constitutes sexual harassment. Three, when making a pass at a woman or man, no means maybe, and maybe means yes. Sexual visuals or objects in a workplace are okay unless someone complains. 5. Sexual harassment can occur outside the work site and still be considered work-related. Six, a man who is sexually harassed does not have the same legal rights as a woman who is sexually harassed. Seven, quid pro quo harassment is a form of sexual harassment when there is a request or demand of sexual favors in exchange for employment benefits or threatening retaliation if the favors are not given. And 8, dirty jokes and language may be construed as sexual harassment. Now for the answers. Number 1, the question was, harassment means demanding sexual favors from a man. The answer is false. Sexual harassment goes beyond demanding sexual favors. Although this is an example of sexual harassment, it is not the only form. Also, it involves demanding sexual favors from a man as well, not just a woman. 2, only physical acts by one employee against another constitutes sexual harassment. False. Sexual harassment also includes non-physical acts such as verbal comments or jokes and actions by or towards groups, not just individuals. When making a pass at a woman or man, no means maybe and maybe means yes. This is false. No means no. Sexual visuals or objects in a workplace are okay unless someone complains. False. Sexual visuals or objects in the workplace are not okay, even if no one has objected. Sexual harassment can occur outside the work site and still be considered work-related. This is true. Sexual harassment is unacceptable whether you are in the workplace, in the parking lot, or even over text. A man who is sexually harassed does not have the same legal rights as a woman who is sexually harassed. This is false. Men and women both have equal rights with sexual harassment. Quid pro quo harassment is a form of sexual harassment when there is a request or demand of sexual favors in exchange for employment benefits or threatening retaliation if the favors are not given. True. It is also true that dirty jokes and language may be construed as sexual harassment.
The Mines policy on sexual harassment. Who has to follow the sexual harassment policy? Everyone is the short answer. All supervisors, managers, employees, directors, temporary employees, and interns are required to follow this policy. Implementing and enforcing this policy is to define workplace sexual harassment, prohibit it in all forms, carry out any appropriate disciplinary measures in the case of violations, and provide procedures for lodging complaints. And as such, everyone from the CEO to outside vendors are required to comply with this policy. As we have learned, sexual harassment is an unwelcome conduct that is sexual in nature, offensive, or interferes with a worker's ability to perform their job. This can be, but is not limited to, unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, touching or verbally harassing employees in a sexual way, both male and female employees. It is also covered under the Civil Rights Act of 1964, under the quid pro quo and hostile work environments that you learned about in previous slides. Disciplinary actions are something that will happen if you are a part of a sexual harassment complaint. This can include and is not limited to a written reprimand, that will be placed in a permanent file, termination of your employment, removal from your current department or position. Additional behavior training or counseling may be required depending on the nature of the complaint. And you can also face civil damages and penalties if the complainant decides to sue you personally under sexual harassment misconduct. So what do you do if you think you have been sexually harassed or you see somebody who has been sexually harassed? Your first step should be to talk to the harasser if this is possible. We understand that sometimes you will be unsafe doing this. If you do not feel safe telling the harasser to stop, or if you tell them to stop and it still continues over time, move on to step 2. As part of step 2, you need to report the incident to your supervisor or your department head. We understand that sometimes it might be your supervisor who is the one conducting the actions against you. If this is the case, we ask that you instead report to the Director of Human Resources directly. This can be done online, by phone, email, text message, or in person. Under this policy, all complaints will be investigated and will be handled confidentially. We cannot guarantee that as the accuser, your name will not be given to the accused. They, much like you, have the right to understand what is happening. The company and human resources will take all available steps to ensure that a complainant is not retaliated against. If you are reporting your supervisor for conduct, this will not result in you being given jobs that are below your position, being removed from your department, having adverse marks in your files, and all information and records will be held in a secure database and files. Some things that can help us complete an investigation into sexual harassment, and while not required but helpful, is to keep a log of the name, department, and position of the accused person. A full description of any of the incidents, including time, dates, and witnesses. Describe any effects the incident had on your ability to perform your job duties, or if you see the incident taking place, how it could affect somebody else's job performance. Provide any information on others who have also been harassed. Please list what you have done to try to stop the harassment if possible. Also, include any information that you believe would be relevant to the investigation into your complaint. If you have notified your supervisors, the next part of the policy is on human resources. Human resources will conduct the following activities. They will ensure that both the individual filing the complaint and the accused are aware of the seriousness of a sexual harassment complaint. Human Resource Director will explain the sexual harassment policy and the investigation procedures that will follow. The HR department will explore any means of resolving the sexual harassment complaint in-house between the two parties. If it is deemed necessary by either the complainant or the HR department, the company will notify authorities if the company feels there was a crime. This could be in the case of rape, threatening messages, or extreme violations or gross misconduct. The HR department will arrange an investigation of the claim. This could be done in-house or outside of the company through a firm. The HR department will submit a written report that will summarize the results of an investigation and make any recommendations to the designated company officials. This could include the reprimand, such as a written complaint in the file, or depending on the degree or severity of the harassment claim, dismissal from your position. The HR department, after conducting a written summary, will talk with both the company officials and any legal representatives, and will notify the complainant and the respondent of the actions that are to be taken, if there are any, and will also administrate those actions. Individuals should report complaints of conduct believed to violate the sexual harassment policy according to these procedures. To initiate a formal investigation, employees should keep detailed notes. You should also always be willing to talk to the HR director.
Now we're going to discuss management's responsibilities when dealing with sexual harassment. Managers are expected to do the following: take all complaints of alleged or actual harassment seriously, report the incident to Human Resources, and take immediate action to prevent future incidents. Management has a legal obligation to thoroughly investigate any reports of sexual harassment or rumors of sexual harassment that they hear. They must remember that they must always take the employee on their word when they report the harassment. Whether they believe them or not, an investigation must be performed. The rumors of sexual harassment include gossip of sexual harassment happening in the company, friends of the harassed employee go to HR on their behalf because they are too afraid to report it themselves, or coworkers of the employee report questionable behavior. There are several actions that management should take after sexual harassment has been reported. They should always start by creating a plan for the investigation. This includes making a list of anybody that seems important that they would like to interview and when and where they would like to conduct the interviews. Always interview the employee who is issuing the complaint. Start the interview by guaranteeing that he or she is safe from retaliation and that they did the right thing in reporting the incident. Also inform the employee that if retaliation happens, you need to know immediately, or if ongoing harassment occurs. Ask the employee to tell you the whole story in his or her own words as detailed as possible. Make sure that you take notes throughout the conversation. Write down facts such as dates, times, situations, witnesses, and anything else that seems important. You also want to tell the person that has been accused that a complaint has been filed and that no acts of retaliation or further harassment will be tolerated. Let the person know that they need to be patient while you're conducting a thorough investigation. Assure the person that has been accused that a fair and just investigation will be conducted on their behalf, as well as that of the accuser. Next, you want to interview any potential witnesses in the same manner that you interviewed the accuser. Make sure to ask open-ended questions and seek facts that support or disprove the allegations. Then you will want to interview the person who is being accused of sexual harassment. Apply the same listening and respectful approach you accorded to the person who filed the complaint and the other witnesses. The next thing you will want to do is take all the information that you received and attempt to reach a decision. Consult with other HR colleagues to do the right thing. You may also consult with an attorney to ensure that you are looking at the situation fairly and getting a second opinion. Based on all the documentation and advice from colleagues and attorney, make a decision about whether sexual harassment actually occurred. Provide the appropriate discipline to the appropriate people based on the findings. You may have to make work or assignment setting adjustments or change your reporting assignment if necessary, depending on the outcome. Always remember that there is no perfect investigation. Even when harassment may have occurred and you believe that it did occur, you may not have enough facts or witnesses that corroborate a complainant's statement. Continue to follow up and assure that no retaliation or further harassment has happened. Make sure to keep documentations of your follow-ups. In conclusion, it's important to know and understand the sexual harassment program. If you need to, make sure you're asking questions or rereading the program. Follow the new sexual harassment policy and procedures for reporting as stated in the employee handbook. Always make sure that you take action immediately, whether you're an employee or a manager. Employees should always report sexual harassment immediately, and management should start an investigation immediately. Constantly reiterate and repost the sexual harassment program so others will see it. This concludes our sexual harassment training.